Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Chairman. Today we have a very interesting conversation. We're going to be talking about domestic violence, what its root causes are, opportunity for prevention and recognition, and also taking a look at what remediation can happen, how we can provide services to the family members so that they can either reunite or get back on their feet again and know that there's a path forward after living with domestic violence for a long time. Now, domestic violence has many forms and shapes. Sometimes it can be anger, sometimes it can be physical, sometimes it can be neglect. So oftentimes this happens because the relationship between two people may have some faults to it. May not be a fault that's caused by one person or another. It may be mental abuse, maybe past experience with their own parents. It may be drug abuse, it may be stress on the job. And they bring this home to their families and release their anger, their disappointments, their own anxiety upon the ones that they love the most. And that love can turn to hatred and to violence sometimes, unfortunately. And it's an issue that faces, again, no matter what your demographics is, what your neighborhood is, how wealthy you may be, or how poor you may be. It's cross-sector. So this is something, since it's the month of the women, I thought I'd like to bring to your attention so we can talk about it, and if you find it of interest, you may want to share this with your family and friends to find the resources that are available here in Kane County to help you. So with that, I'd like to introduce two incredible women, Michelle Meyer, who works for the Kane County Health Department, and Dr. Alexandra Tsang, who's got an extraordinary resume, who's currently our Director, Chief Psychologist of the Kane County Diagnostic Center. So Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Michelle Meyer. I, like you said, was previously the CEO of Mutual Ground for about 12 years, but I started there as an intern right after I got out of college, so I kind of worked my way up. I did work in the Kane County Judicial Center and the Aurora Branch Court with helping victims get orders of protection for about 10 years before I became the CEO, and so I have a very long history in domestic and sexual violence, and then later on in my career there, we brought in substance use as well and merged an organization into Mutual Ground called Breaking Free because we recognized that there was some intersections between domestic violence and substance use. Then after 12 years, it seemed like a good time to say goodbye to Mutual Ground and have them go on their own path, and I answered a application for Assistant Director of Community Health at the Health Department in Kane County, and that's where I'm at now. I've been there for a little over a year. Love it. It's fantastic.
We love you being there.
And I love being able to stay in the community and be out in the community and help as much as possible.
Wonderful. Alexandra.
Hi, I'm Dr. Alexandra Tsang. I'm the director of the Kane County Diagnostic Center. I've actually been with the county for 26 years and at the Diagnostic Center for 26 years, starting with internship and moved my way up, held every single position there until director, and I've been director for now about 11, 12 years. But what the Diagnostic Center is, it is a dedicated psychology department for the Kane County Court System, 16th Judicial Circuit. Very unique that a court system would have their own facility to do all the psychological evaluations, mandated treatment. We sit on the specialty courts, especially drug court and mental health court. So we're involved in various aspects in the court system. Everything we do is a mandate and by court order, so we work for the judges. So everything, all the services are provided because a judge orders it.
So one of the things that Illinois has is a mandate that if you recognize domestic abuse with a neighbor, with a relative, that you are required to speak about it, to tell the authorities of your concern. However, in conversations with these two women, I have found out that many families choose not to take that route. So I right now would like to talk to Michelle and have her insights about working with domestic violence survivors And it's hard for me to talk about because that was very much in my family, so it's very dear to my heart. To talk about what happens when a man or woman comes knocking on your door.
Yeah, so when I was at Mutual Ground, if any person came knocking at the door of Mutual Ground, the first thing that would happen was that person would be welcomed with open arms. There would be no judgment. And that person would go through an intake process, and we would see exactly what that person needed. So does that person need to get an order of protection in the courts? Mm-hmm. Does that person need individual counseling? Would that person benefit from support groups or family counseling? Does that individual have children? Do they need children's counseling? Mm-hmm. Does that individual have a substance use disorder that they need to deal with? And lastly, does that person need emergency shelter? Probably more firstly that would happen. And so we had a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week domestic violence shelter. Again, still exists. It's amazing. There were 28 beds when I was there, 7 cribs. We would have, but the majority of the people that would come to the door did not need shelter. The majority of the people that would come to the door or call on the crisis lines either just wanted to talk to somebody to see if what they were dealing with was in fact domestic violence, and what was available for help. Just kind of feeling things out, because it's very scary to ask for help for domestic violence.
Oh, indeed.
Because that's when you actually do make that decision to leave or to get help, that is when things can become lethal. And so that's a very scary thing. And also, you know, what you don't know is scarier than what you know sometimes. Mm-hmm. So if you are in a situation where your abuser has all the finances and you have no finances, and you've been, you know, a stay-at-home mom the whole time, which is an awesome, amazing job to have, but maybe he was keeping the finances from you, or she was keeping the finances from you, then you're kind of stuck. I mean, you have to figure things out. And so if you call Mutual Ground, they'll go through what's called a safety plan with you and go through all of those different things and help you kind of come up with a plan on how you could leave safely if you decide to do so. Yes. A lot of people don't decide to. They want to have a conversation and it stays there, and that's fine. And again, there's no judgment. We're just there to help when the person is ready.
Wow. Okay, so what happens then at the next step, if a next step takes place?
If the next step for us, if the next step takes place and the woman mostly decides to pursue charges, you know, domestic violence charges, and you have to keep in mind that, you know, the one time she may actually, you know, call the police because of all the other factors Michelle was just telling us about. It's not so easy. People ask all the time, well, why doesn't she just get up and leave? And you just heard that she might not have the resources, and it may not be so simple if you don't have a driver's license. We had a case where the woman didn't have a driver's license or a car, and that was all designed to keep her kind of, you know, almost hostage at home. But the next step would be if you know, police are involved and the offender gets arrested. For us, we would, you know, typically, we don't get all, but typically would get psychological evaluation referral from the court system to assess risk on the offender. Because again, domestic violence is a broad term, right? It could range from almost lethal means of domestic homicide to, you know, behaviors. It's all serious, but there are just so many pathways and just so many different circumstances. So for us, I would say of all the psychological evaluations we do, and we do between 400 and 500 total per year.
That's quite a bit.
Yes, it is. Of the general psych, and it would fall under that category, most of them, at least half of them, are domestic violence related. So then in our part, we would actually have the person undergo extensive psychological testing. We have measures that are designed to assess someone's general personality. Is there substance use issues? Is there anger issues? Is there power and control issues? Because there is quite a difference between anger management issues and domestic battery issues. And people kind of think that domestic violence is just a lack of control of anger. Anger is involved, but it's not about not controlling its anger. Anger is used to control the situation. It's used as a tactic and as a tool to maintain coercive control power and control of the woman. So anger is because if you think about domestic violence batterers, they don't go and punch their bosses or their co-workers. In society, they are very nice and engaging. It's really within that intimate partner violence. Whereas someone with anger management issues, well, they'll blow up. Those are the bar fight people or road rage people. Okay. They just can't modulate your anger. But it's a very important distinction that it's not just, a lack of controlling anger. It's really about power and control.
Wow. All right. So let's go back now to the victims, and eventually we're going to go down to the children. So you have an individual who comes to your door and they seek help and they actually want to leave and they're able to leave. How do you get that family member, that mother, let's say it's a mother, up on her feet to have the confidence to be able to not feel so insecure and so dependent? What steps are taken?
So that has a lot to do with the counseling and also with just getting resources. So each person, when they came in, each woman, if it was a woman, and it is the majority of women, they would come in and Mutual Ground would wrap their services around that person. So they would get a case manager, a counselor for the kids, possibly a substance use disorder counselor, and possibly a legal advocate to take them through the court process.
Okay.
So when you have those people wrapped around you, the case manager is helping you get the resources that you need.
Like what?
Let's say they're putting you on housing lists to make sure that you can get into housing, getting transportation vouchers, lining up childcare, even as little as it's Christmas time and you need Christmas gifts for your kids and you're not at home anymore. I mean, like all of those things. Food. Getting you, hooked up with the food pantries, all the things that you need to survive, essentially.
Okay.
And then the counselor is there to help boost that confidence, to actually get into things too that are maybe the root causes of why you found yourself, not you found yourself, but the situation came upon you. So maybe you have a generational cycle of domestic violence happening in your family where all you knew growing up was domestic violence. And so then you entered a situation like that, not thinking, or actually thinking it was normal, right?
Normal.
So getting to the root of that issue and then just giving you hope and seeing what else is out there and that you can survive and you can do this. And then possibly you get a legal advocate that takes you through the court process. And even if there's not criminal charges, maybe you still need a civil order of protection. Sure. And that can help you regain access to your house so that you can be in the house while you get these things together. Keep the offender away from you. Keep the offender away from the kids at school. Basically just helping you. It's just a tool in your tool belt, right? It's not going to stop a bullet. It's a tool that you use in order to keep yourself safe. But then they're also going to go through a safety plan with you. Okay, well, if this person is following you, maybe take a different route to work, maybe walk with somebody out to your car. All the little things that you can do to keep yourself safe. Keep your doors locked. Keep your important documents in one place. If you're going to live with the abuser, make sure that you don't get into a fight in the kitchen because that's where the knives are. I mean, it's as little as that, but those are all the things that we are talking to them about to try to help the person stay safe. And then with the kids, we're getting the kids into counseling and we're explaining to the kids that it's not your fault that this is happening. Absolutely. Because again, you then are just going to get that generational cycle of violence happening with her kids if that doesn't stop at some point.
And it's interesting, you mentioned the children. There are research studies showing that children witnessing domestic violence, have a traumatic response. You talked about the passing down of the generational and then getting into dysfunctional relationships because that's what you think you deserve. That's what's been normalized. But there's also kind of a, trauma response in the children. Seeing the violence, seeing the mother scream and cry, whoever the parents are.
Of course.
But, that has a profound effect on children too. So the fact to include the children in part of the recovery process is crucial too, and especially when we're talking about trying to make sure it kind of stops, with this generation. That's one thing you can absolutely do.
And parenting is very important. At Mutual Ground, they do parenting with the child and the mom, or the non-offending parent, to strengthen that bond. Just because, like she said, it's very traumatic, and people who've grown up in situations of domestic violence, they're going to have other things that could possibly happen in their life, like substance use.
Correct.
At some point, because it's
To
it's one of the ACEs. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it happens all the time. Maybe it's not domestic violence, but it's substance use, or it's whatever it is, some type of a behavior that causes their life to go in a direction that they don't want it to go in.
So the impact of this is both financial, self-esteem, mental health, and lasting impact about a child. So but parenting, having the relationship between a mother and a father, is something very important to the child, and for the children to recognize that their parents are not golden parents, that they have fault, that they are humans. How do you bring the offender back in to the relationship? Maybe not with the spouse, because that's, once that breaks, it's probably that crack, that foundation is gone. But how do you bring that person back in with the children? What are the next steps that happen?
Well, first I would say very carefully.
Of course. Of course.
The second, I would not introduce that idea until the offender has had his own treatment.
Okay.
So part of the psychological evaluations, not only do we assess risk for the court, so we will say low, moderate, or high risk of reoffending. But with that, we will make treatment recommendations. By and large, the evidence-based treatment is group therapy for offenders, as Michelle, I'm sure, is nodding, because group therapy, again, the distortions and the rationalizations and the justifications an offender has that uphold that type of behavior, it's very hard to do in therapy one-on-one. Because, you can say, well, that you shouldn't have pushed her. Well, she pushed me, or she should have listened to me. I didn't do anything wrong, it was her. And then where do you go from, but when you put an offender with other men in the group that maybe are farther along in treatment, they will call each other out on their behavior. Hey, I used to think that way. That is zero tolerance. You should never, react like that. So part of, the process of recovery, and even if there's reunification potentially within the family, you really have to, I think, target both, the trauma response in the victim and children, but also the, offending partner really has to at least start engaging in services that would help with this mentality and the behavior, because you don't want to bring the family into one room, have the victim say something, and then he goes home and then, gives it to her because she said something wrong or she exposed him in therapy. And that's one of the dangers why it's very important timing in terms of if you ever do couples therapy. The victim will not want to say anything that might make her be punished later on at home. So it's a very, it's complicated, right?
Yes, it is.
It's like the song and dance kind of knowing like when to incorporate the kids or victim or is this family. It's really case by case.
Yeah, there's no blanket
there's no
solution.
Magic, like this is the protocol that all families have to follow. You can't. You have to assess safety and resources and where everyone is with their own levels, of therapeutic engagement.
And so if to leave one's house with one's children in tow, or just to leave one's house because of the domestic violence, is quite a step to make. I mean, it may be done in panic, safety. You may have just run out, maybe with your purse, hopefully your car keys, so you can just stop and feel that you're in a safe space. But those services are only short term. How do you transition, whether back to your home with the partner at home still, or you go out and seek your own apartment if that individual will not leave the family home? what support systems do you have for long-term engagement? Because this is not something that happens. You cannot remedy this in 3 months.
No.
This may take years or a lifetime.
There's definitely a shortage in housing in general. And then if you look at the fact that, I want to say it was like hopefully I'm not wrong on this, but like 65% of homeless women are homeless because of domestic violence. So like,
Well, that
the
means
homeless-
the children,
That's a
the-
staggering.
then the
Yeah.
children are with them as well.
yeah, and we're already
Which are all
facing
different issues.
housing crisis anyways. So that's a big problem. There isn't a lot of options out there besides getting put on a list for housing, or and that could take who knows how long.
time.
So I would just say that that's something that I think that the county keeps working on, that these organizations keep working on, is getting more affordable housing available.
Absolutely.
More maybe transitional housing for victims. Those are definitely things that are needed, because if you can't even be safe in your own home, then everything else is going to be out of whack. Like you at least need a
Absolutely.
safe place to call home to get some other things in order. Otherwise, it's just extremely hard to
Repeat,
do. Yeah.
repeat.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever come across family members who may be victim's mother or father or the spouse's relatives who say, oh, you two should get back together. You're such a good couple with each other. Or religiously, it's a marriage, which is a marriage for life. How can you direct that so that...
I mean, everything you're saying is very relevant, because I think our victims definitely hear that. And it's very hard to offset that kind of, you see it in certain aspects generationally, whether it's, yes, marriages, well, you said I do, you have to stick it out. And it's very hard. It is very hard because it is such a disservice to the victim. It's very disempowering, and here, if she is in therapy, you have all the advocates and all the therapists trying to empower her, right? Because especially, again, this is about power and control. Her power has been taken away from her. So you have one side trying to empower her, but yet, getting these messages from the family members. And we, typically we don't invite the extended family into a therapy session. That's not how it works. But, really in that instance, what you can do, and it takes time, is to just empower, encourage her as much as you can, because ultimately that has to be her choice. And having the conversation how those are distorted, very older beliefs that they don't hold true. They don't do anything to foster a sense of respect for the woman or anyone who is a victim of domestic violence, for the children. Those are very kind of archaic point of views, and not based in anything sound psychologically. And so we really, really have to deal with that victim. Right?
It's really hard because spirituality and religion is important to a lot of people. And so you don't want to disrespect that, because that is a deeply held belief for a lot of people, and that is fine. And so I think I agree. You just have to keep, from our perspective and from a perspective of an organization that is trying to deal with domestic and sexual violence, is just explaining what you're seeing on a grand scale, like what you've seen in your experience. This is what happens, until that person is ready to make the decision on their own. I think that's the only way you can really go about it without disrespecting somebody's spiritual or religious beliefs.
Of course.
And sometimes you even have to backpedal further and talk to the person about, this is domestic violence.
Yes.
I mean, even from
Just
square
label it.
one.
Just
He
label
just,
it.
that he's such a nice guy, but that one or twice, or only when he drinks, he'll push me into a wall. But he's a really nice guy.
And he's such a good dad.
Exactly. And we talk about the domestic violence cycle, like there's a honeymoon phase right after the offending behavior. Here's jewelry and flowers, and I'm sorry, I never will do it again. But it's kind of switching that mentality that no, your husband or boyfriend is a batterer, and these are just little glimpses of times where he's nice, instead of what she's thinking is he's a nice guy, and the little glimpses are he gets domestic violent, right?
Absolutely.
So the domestic violence are not exceptions. That's who he is, with the exceptions being the nice, calm times.
And those times are also meant to keep her in the relationship, right?
Yes.
Because he's not violent all the time, so I'm going to stay in this relationship because when the times are good, they're good.
Exactly. You know? It's not so bad.
Right.
It's not like he hits me every day.
Right.
You know, it's so we have to sometimes start in square one, that this is not okay. This is not okay to be treated like this. You know, there's physical domestic violence, financial control. There is technological control. Like, give me your phone. I need you on GPS. If you don't answer my texts within 5 minutes, I will, you know, you get the 30 texts. You know, there's a lot of ways someone can be kind of coercive and psychologically abusive. You know, humiliating, embarrassment, isolation. We didn't talk about that. Isolating her from family members, saying, "Oh, your family's crazy. You know, don't be. They make you a bad person. I'm the only person you need," and that's all very intentional. You know, you want to cut off all her barriers to support, and you want to cut her off from any person that would be able to say, you know what, I don't like the way he's treating you. You know, are you okay? Or where's that bruise, you know, coming from? Part of that isolation is to keep, you know, her from, you know, doubting the relationship, because he wants her to stay.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we talked a lot about the victim. For the other side of the coin, how can you recognize, what tools could you possibly learn, whether as a teenager or a young adult, to know if you're going down that path, to recognize behaviors in yourself, that if you've had a girlfriend or if you've had a boyfriend, on how to recognize that, I'm in a path that is not healthy for me, and I'm doing things that are not healthy, or I'm receiving things that are not healthy. Do we have those opportunities for education, whether it's at school, in high school, or at community college with a health wellness class or gym class? Because even in college you have to take gym.
Yeah, right. So I know at Mutual Ground, they have a very robust prevention program that goes into the schools. And they're talking to kids as little as preschool all the way to seniors in high school, and I know they're going to colleges too.
Wonderful.
And talking to kids about, you know, love shouldn't hurt, you know, domestic violence. They're talking to them about sexual harassment, what to do if you are sexually harassed, what to do if you're touched inappropriately, who to tell, all of those things. I know that Mutual Ground does a really great job. I believe that it's being done in the Northern County, but I'm not as familiar. But I do know that they're in basically all the schools out on the southern.
The dating violence can certainly begin in high school, even younger, you know, middle school, you know, when kind of dating begins, because again, it's an intimate partner issue, right? But we've seen cases certainly where, you know, the boy all of a sudden is like, you can't wear that, you know, telling the girl what to do, or where were you, signs of jealousy, and sometimes again the misconceptions about jealousy. Oh, he cares. He's
about
jealous.
me, yes.
Oh, that means he's really investing, he loves me. And again, kind of like you said, love shouldn't hurt. You know, if something feels off, chances are it is off. But, you know, it begins with sometimes subtle, sometimes not, but subtle ways of power and control. So again, commenting on what you're wearing, where are you going, how long are you going to be, giving the woman or girl a curfew. Oh, you're out late. You know, I want you home by 10 o'clock. I miss you. You should be home with me. You know, anything that feels like it's about control. And again, these are more subtle signs, like saying, oh, you know, I wouldn't wear that. Like some girls, especially teenage girls, wouldn't really think, oh, identify that, oh, that's controlling, and that could be a red flag for future domestic violence. You know, they're not thinking that way, right?
Well, and when we grew up, we didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has changed the game a lot, too, as far as being able to threaten, stalk, harass.
The GPS.
Yeah, I mean,
even
it's,
on cars. I mean, the stalking,
yes,
following.
yeah, it's
Put
constant.
a tracker on the car.
Absolutely.
It's
Or
constant.
even on, there's so many things you can share, share location on an iPhone, or share even a shared email, or shared social media accounts. Like, you are not allowed to have your own identity on social media, because they need to know who's talking to you, what you're saying, how are you responding, monitoring that.
And also degrading somebody online,
Yes.
posting pictures that they don't want posted online,
Sure.
ruining the reputation online. All of that's happening now.
Yes.
That's very scary, because that stays there, forever.
Basically, yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part of it now.
So, as you're growing up and you're learning these life skills, do you do role playing as far in both the survivor, the offender, and the child growing up? Do you teach them role playing that, say, if something happens to you and this is, they can switch roles, how to talk back to that individual, to have the early learned courage to say, I don't appreciate that. Do you know you're doing that? Is that taught?
I believe so, yes. I mean, from what I know of in the southern portion of county, it is being taught. And even at a young age, they're talking about, good touch, bad touch. If somebody touches you here, you scream no. You find out who's the adult you're going to tell. Similarly, when you get older, if somebody says something to you that makes you feel degraded or isolated, or like somebody's trying to control you, what do you say? How do you have those conversations? How do you assert yourself? While still keeping yourself safe, and then also, again, telling somebody, because all this happens in the shadows. Like, it all happens in secret, and that's where the secrets are, where things get really bad. If you can tell somebody, if you feel comfortable, you have that adult that you can talk to about what's going on, then you're far less likely to keep going in a situation that could get worse, I think.
Yes, and role playing certainly is a technique in therapy, and I find it's very helpful when people sometimes just don't know what words to use. Even within therapy or having difficult conversations, and I think it really allows to help them choose the words. This is how you can say it, or what are you feeling, but in a very safe environment.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's a great technique where people struggle, and sometimes they even say, I don't know what I'm feeling. And that's true. When a lot of, within the therapeutic situation, sometimes people can't identify. They know they're feeling something not good. Especially in working with children. Their verbal skills aren't yet, as developed. They just know they don't like it, that it's not a good thing. But I mean, that's part of the therapist's job, is to help them find the words and help them how to express themselves. So, very powerful technique.
So we've come to about the end of our wonderful, wonderful interview with these two remarkable women, and to all the other remarkable women who are out here in Kane County. Thanks for joining us.